I never thought I'd be the man who shattered a good woman's heart. At 58 years old, with a career I built from scratch and a marriage that had survived job losses, cancer scares, and the rough patches of raising 2 kids, we were supposed to be coasting now. Comfortable, settled, grateful. But here I am, sitting in my parked car outside a quiet office complex, staring at the phone in my hand, wondering how the hell I let this happen. Her name is Sophie Mitchell. She's 34, smart, assertive, ambitious, and trouble in every imaginable way. I should have seen it coming. Hell, maybe I did. Maybe that's what pulled me in. It started simple. She joined our firm about 8 months ago. Young blood, the kind of person you assign to outreach meetings and client onboarding because she has that energy. The way she smiles when she talks, the way she listens like you're the only voice in the room. I was supposed to be her mentor. Instead, I became her secret. The first time we went out alone wasn't even a date. Drinks after a long client pitch, just the 2 of us left when the others filtered out. I talked about the old days, how business was done face to face, handshake to handshake. She listened, leaning in like my words actually meant something. I hadn't felt heard like that in years. Linda, my wife, was always there, always steady. But routine has a way of softening urgency. We stopped talking about dreams and started talking about grocery lists. Sex? Once every couple of months, sometimes not even that. I knew it wasn't her fault. We were both tired. Life piled up. But that night with Sophie, for the first time in what felt like decades, I felt wanted. 1 beer turned into 2. She laughed at a stupid story I told about a plumbing disaster in my first apartment. Then she touched my arm. Not flirty, just a moment. But electricity shot up from that spot, all the way into my throat. I told myself nothing would happen. I had a wife, a home, grandkids on the way. But the truth is, something already had. The line had been crossed the moment I looked at Sophie and thought, what if? The first time we kissed, it was raining. Yeah, like a movie cliche. We'd left the office late, too late, and were both soaked by the time we reached our cars. She looked at me and smiled, brushing her wet hair back, and said, "You're not like other guys your age." I asked what that meant, and she said, "You still have a soul in your eyes." I kissed her right there in the parking lot like a fool. The guilt didn't come right away. That was the worst part. I went home, and Linda was making spaghetti. She kissed my cheek, asked about my day, and I lied with a smile so convincing I scared myself. We ate, watched TV. I touched her hand and tried to feel something, anything. But all I saw were Sophie's eyes, soaked in rain and sin. I didn't plan to do it again. But of course I did, and then again, and again. We kept it quiet. Sophie didn't want a relationship, just something real in a fake world. She said it like poetry, and I bought it. I was addicted to the way she made me feel young, relevant, alive. Every time I looked at myself in the mirror and saw my gray hair, my soft jawline, my growing gut, I thought of how she touched me like I was a man she wanted, not a man she settled for. But secrets are hungry. They eat through everything: trust, routine, laughter at the breakfast table. And now, I can feel them circling. Linda's started asking questions, innocent ones, about my schedule, about text messages I never used to hide, about the new cologne I started wearing. She notices everything, even when she doesn't say it. And Sophie? She's starting to want more. Time, commitment, promises I can't make. I don't know how this ends. Maybe I confess. Maybe Linda finds out on her own. Maybe I lose everything, and maybe I deserve to. But all I know is this. I became the man I used to judge. The kind of man who breaks a woman who gave him everything. And I don't even know if I'm sorry. Linda wasn't a suspicious woman by nature. That was what made it worse. She had this quiet trust in people. In me. For over 30 years, she believed in the version of me I showed her. Steady, loyal, tired, but dependable. A man who showed up on time, paid the bills, kissed her forehead in the morning, and brought her coffee with exactly 1 spoon of sugar and just a splash of milk. We had rituals, and we had history. That should have been enough. But lately, I could feel her watching me. Not accusing, not angry, just noticing. It started with little things. She asked where I'd been when I got home 30 minutes later than usual. I gave her the name of a client. I even made up a meeting that didn't exist. She nodded, but her eyes didn't follow the nod. She just said, "Oh, okay," and went back to stirring the soup. That okay broke me more than if she had screamed. The next day, she left a note on the bathroom mirror. "Don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning. Also, I love you." 3 short sentences. The first was routine. The second was loaded like a shotgun. I stood there brushing my teeth, staring at those words. I love you. I'd said them to Sophie last week, not in a movie way, not in a moment of heat, but in a low, murmured voice while she was lying on her side, half asleep in the cheap hotel room we used every other Thursday. I hadn't planned it. It just came out. She didn't say it back. She smiled and kissed my hand. That should have told me everything I needed to know. Linda started checking my shirts. Not directly. She wasn't the type to rifle through my pockets. But I noticed my folded dress shirts smelled faintly of lavender detergent, not the usual scent we used. She'd washed them again, re-washed them, looking for perfume maybe, or guilt. I deleted all my messages with Sophie, changed the name on her contact to Steve Marketing, set my phone to silent when I got home. Every precaution just made me feel more exposed. One night, around 11:30 p.m., I woke up and Linda wasn't in bed. I found her downstairs in the living room, sitting in the dark, just the glow of her tablet lighting her face. She was scrolling something. When I asked if she was okay, she said, "Yeah, couldn't sleep." But her voice was tight, the kind of tight that holds back a scream. We sat there in silence. I offered to make tea. She said no. I should have told her right then. Ripped off the bandage. But I was a coward. I still am. Sophie was growing impatient. "You're always leaving with half your heart still at home," she said one afternoon. We were supposed to spend a full evening together. I'd made an excuse about a work dinner so Linda wouldn't question it, but then canceled last minute because Linda said she didn't feel well. I couldn't leave her, not like that. Sophie didn't yell. She just shut down. "You're too old to be living a double life," she said as she fixed her lipstick in the mirror. I wanted to snap at her. Tell her she had no idea what it was like to carry the weight of a lifetime on your shoulders. A mortgage, grown kids with their own problems, a wife who once saved your life when you had cancer at 43. But I didn't say any of that, because she was right. I was too old for this. Too damn old to be sneaking around, lying, gaslighting the one woman who had stood by me when I was broke and broken. Later that week, Linda asked me if I'd go with her to visit her sister in Nashville. Just a weekend. Just us. Maybe take the scenic route, stay at that bed and breakfast we liked years ago. I hesitated for a second. That's all it took. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "You've been distant lately, Ray. she said. I thought maybe some time together would help. I smiled and agreed. Told her I'd love that. Hugged her tighter than I had in weeks. But inside I was panicking. That weekend, Sophie had already planned a getaway. A cabin in the woods just outside Franklin. Her idea. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just us, she had said. 2 women, 2 plans, 2 lives, and a man with none of the courage to choose. The weekend with Linda started like a memory I didn't know I'd missed. She packed sandwiches in a cooler like she used to when the kids were small. She made a playlist full of old songs we used to sing in the car. Bonnie Raitt, James Taylor, Fleetwood Mac. We took the long way to Asheville, winding through quiet mountain roads, windows cracked open, breeze in our faces. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Sophie. I was thinking about the woman in the passenger seat who used to laugh so easily when I reached over and tickled her knee at stoplights. I was thinking about how her hair had started to gray near the temples, but she still tucked it behind her ear like she was 25. I was thinking, God help me, about how it used to feel just falling asleep next to her. At the inn, we stayed in the same room we had 10 years ago. Linda remembered the creaky floorboard near the closet and the way the hallway smelled like pine cleaner and old books. That night, we sat on the porch in matching robes, drinking wine from plastic cups. She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder, and said softly, I miss us. I didn't answer, because I did too, and the shame of that nearly broke me. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed like a guilty conscience. Sophie had messaged me, Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Then again, so you just ghost me now? Is this who you are? And finally, I'm done being your secret, Ray. I deserve more. I turned the phone off. I didn't want to read what came next. Linda was asleep in bed when I walked back in. She looked peaceful. Her hand was resting on the pillow where mine used to be. I stood there for a long time, wondering what the hell I was doing and what the hell I was about to do. I kissed her forehead and slid in next to her. But I didn't sleep. The drive home was quieter. Not awkward, just settled. Like we'd both said something important without actually saying it. Linda smiled more, touched my hand at stoplights. She told me she'd been thinking about taking a part-time job again, maybe at the local library or bookstore. I just miss talking to people, she said. I told her I thought it was a great idea. I meant it. But the moment we got home, the phone was back on, and Sophie had left a voicemail. Her voice was low and angry. I hope you had a good time playing Husband of the Year. I was stupid to think you'd ever leave her. Don't worry, I won't bother you again. But you owe me the truth, Ray. I deserve that much. She was right. Again. 2 days later, Sophie didn't show up to work. Not a call, not a text, just gone. I asked around casually. Nobody knew anything. I pretended not to care. But the silence screamed. That night, I drove to the apartment I knew she stayed in. I'd been there twice, always after dark, always carefully timed. I knocked on the door. No answer. The lights were off. I stood in the hallway for a while, holding a dozen roses I had no business carrying. A woman from across the hall poked her head out. She moved out yesterday, she said. U-Haul came in the afternoon. Moved out? Without saying goodbye? Without leaving a note, a message, a curse? I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt abandoned. And for the first time, truly, I felt grief. When I got home, Linda was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She looked up, then down at the flowers. Those for me? She asked. I nodded and set them down in front of her. Yeah, just felt like you deserved some beauty tonight. She smiled gently. That's sweet. But something in her voice told me. She knew. Not the details, not the name, not the depth of what I'd done. But she knew something, and she was waiting. For me to tell her, or for it to fall apart on its own. The quiet that followed was the kind that didn't feel peaceful. It felt dangerous. Linda never asked where I'd been that night when I came home with the flowers. She didn't ask why my shoes were wet, or why I looked like I hadn't slept. She just said thank you, put the roses in a vase, and made tea. That silence had weight. A storm that hadn't broken yet. At work, Sophie's absence created a ripple. Her name came up in Monday's meeting. Anyone know what happened to Sophie Mitchell? My manager asked. Someone mumbled something about family issues. HR said they received her resignation by email. No further information. Just gone. Like a ghost, I had imagined. But she was real. Too real. I couldn't focus. Every phone ring made my skin crawl. Every time Linda looked at me for more than a few seconds, I felt like she could see the whole thing printed across my forehead. Cheater. Liar. Coward. I found myself reaching for old habits. Work late, fake meetings, long drives with no destination. But Sophie wasn't on the other end anymore. There was no text waiting, no half-lie to comfort myself with. All I had left was Linda, and the ticking bomb of truth. One evening, she asked me to sit with her on the porch. It was just past sunset, the sky a soft purple, and she had 2 glasses of iced tea waiting. We didn't speak for a while. Then she said, "Ray, can I ask you something?" I nodded, already feeling the sweat gather at my collar. "Are you unhappy with me?" It wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. It was tired. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't know," I finally said. "I don't think so. I think I'm just lost." She looked down at her glass. I felt that too. And then she said something that cracked me open. "I know something's wrong. I don't need the details. I don't even want them. I just want to know if it's over, whatever it was." I couldn't lie anymore. I nodded. "Yes, it's over." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat very still, then reached over and placed her hand on mine. "I'm not asking you to fix everything overnight," she said. "But if there's anything left of us, Ray, I need you to fight for it." And then she stood up and went inside, leaving me with nothing but my own damn heartbeat and the echo of who I used to be. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I lay next to her, fully clothed, not touching, not speaking, just breathing in sync, like 2 people trying to remember how to be one. Over the next week, I started doing the things I should have been doing all along. I came home early. I turned off my phone at the door. I made dinner twice. Nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread, but Linda smiled like it was Christmas dinner. We watched a movie together, old Clint Eastwood. She leaned her head on my shoulder. The intimacy wasn't physical. It was quieter, more sacred. A kind of truce. But healing is not linear. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and found Linda wiping her eyes with a dish towel. I froze. "What happened?" She shook her head. "Nothing. I'm fine." But I knew. The pain came in waves, and I was the tide. I wanted to tell her everything, to confess it all, from the first kiss to the motel rooms, to the way Sophie laughed when she wore my shirt. But that would be cruelty, not honesty. So instead, I just held her, tightly, without words. She didn't pull away. I found a letter from her a few days later, folded inside my desk drawer, tucked between tax papers and an old birthday card. She didn't mention Sophie by name. She didn't even use the word affair. But she wrote, "I don't know if I still believe in us, but I believe in who we were. And I believe in the man who held my hand when I was sick, even if that man forgot how to love me for a while." It was dated 3 weeks ago. She had known. She had always known. I kept the letter, read it twice a day, sometimes 3. Not because I deserved its grace, I didn't, but because it reminded me that love, even fractured, still had shape, still had weight. Linda hadn't left. She hadn't screamed or cursed or thrown plates like in the movies. She had simply waited. For what, I still wasn't sure, but I owed her everything now. And I owed Sophie silence. Weeks passed. Life returned to a kind of normal, but it was a cautious normal. Like walking across ice you're not sure is thick enough. Linda and I moved through the house like dance partners relearning old steps. She started humming again when she cooked. I stopped pretending to check work emails after dinner. We weren't better, but we were trying. One night, we went out to dinner, just the 2 of us. The place where we used to celebrate anniversaries. She wore the same green dress she'd worn 5 years ago. I told her she looked beautiful, and this time I meant it without guilt behind the words. She smiled, a real smile, and reached for my hand across the table. And for a moment, I thought maybe redemption wasn't a myth. Until Sophie came back, not to work, not to my doorstep, but to my inbox, an email, no subject, no greeting. Just this: "Hope your perfect little world is intact." I told myself I wouldn't say anything, but I lied. You used me, and I let you. No threats, no blackmail, just poison. And she was right. I had used her, for youth, for escape, for ego. And worst of all, I had used Linda's trust like a shield while I did it. I didn't respond. I deleted the message. Then I emptied the trash bin. But her words stayed, clung to my ribs like rust. That night, Linda found me standing in the hallway, staring at the wedding photo on the wall. I didn't even realize she was behind me until she touched my back. "You were thinner," she said, smiling gently. "You were radiant," I replied. "Still are." She didn't answer, just stood beside me, shoulder to shoulder, looking at that frozen moment of promise. Then she said, "I've decided to forgive you." No build-up, no ceremony, just that. I turned to her, stunned. "You don't even know the full story." She looked up at me. "Ray, I don't want the full story. I've imagined worse than anything you could possibly say. That's the curse of imagination. And the burden of love." My throat closed. "I don't forgive you because I'm weak," she said. "I forgive you because I'm tired of bleeding." I started to cry, not out of pity for myself, but because I didn't deserve this woman and never had. That weekend, we went for a walk in Centennial Park. The sun was warm, the kind of afternoon that makes you feel like the world might actually heal. We sat on a bench, sharing a lemon popsicle from a street vendor. Linda looked over at a couple nearby, young, laughing, arms tangled like vines. "Do you think they'll make it?" she asked. I smiled. "Maybe. If they learn how to break and come back together?" She nodded. "Not everyone does." "No," I said, "but I'd like to think we will." She leaned against me. "Then let's stop looking back." That night, I took off my wedding ring and polished it for the first time in years. Not because it was tarnished, but because I wanted it to shine again, like us, or what we could still become. Some things never fully heal. but they stopped bleeding. It didn't happen overnight. Linda and I had to learn how to talk again. Not just about schedules or errands, but about feelings, needs, fears. We sat across from each other more than once, both silent, both searching for the right words and often failing. But we showed up every day, and that, it turns out, was enough. I started therapy, alone at first. Linda didn't ask questions. She simply nodded when I told her. I think part of her was relieved. Another part, maybe afraid of what I'd discover. The truth is, I didn't cheat because I stopped loving her. I cheated because I stopped seeing myself in her eyes and went looking for my reflection in someone younger, more admiring, less familiar. But that wasn't love. That was fear. Of age. Of irrelevance. Of the quiet truth that I was no longer the man I used to be and didn't know how to be the man she needed now. But I wanted to become him again. For her. For me. Sundays became sacred. We started taking drives together. No destination, no schedule, just miles and music. She sang again, sometimes off-key, sometimes with tears in her eyes. I didn't care. I would have driven to the ends of the earth just to hear her hum along to the radio. I started holding her hand again, not because I had to, because I wanted to. 6 months passed before she brought up Sophie. We were watching the rain streak down the living room window, a soft thunder in the distance. She turned to me and asked, "Do you still think about her?" I didn't lie. "Sometimes," I said, "but not the way I used to. Not with longing. More like a shadow, a mistake I carry so I don't forget what I almost lost." Linda nodded slowly. "I can live with that," she whispered, and I knew she meant it. We renewed our vows the following spring, just the two of us. No guests, no photographers, just a quiet patch of garden behind a cabin we rented in the Smoky Mountains. She wore a simple blue dress. I wore a suit that didn't quite fit like it used to. We exchanged new rings, and this time I cried when I slid it onto her finger, not out of guilt, out of gratitude. The past didn't disappear. It never does. But it stopped owning us. We became something stronger than perfect. We became real. And that's worth everything. Leave a comment, give us a like, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for being here with us.